Hello and welcome to the Malika Writes channel. My name is Malika Writes and today we are going to be doing another Q&A. So thank you to everyone who sent in questions. So the first question today, this was a point of disagreement that someone had with a statement I made, which was a blanket statement where I said, while women were restricted, men were allowed to do their thing. The context I was talking about this in is not human history because human history is very dynamic. It's something that you have societies that were very different and structured differently. We've had female monarchs, not just in the West, but all over the world. So it's not a thing of, oh, women were always oppressed or men are always barbaric. There's different systems, there's different dynamics, there's also individual choice. So you're going to have some men who are oppressive, you're going to have some women who are oppressive, you're going to have people in general who just decide to be bad people, but you're also on the other side of the spectrum going to have people who decide to be good people. So when it comes to that statement that I made, I was talking about it in the context of storytelling. So, in stories, when the call to adventure is felt, there is an assumption that the male character will answer that call. There is an expectation that he should answer the call. In stories where there is a woman who may not necessarily be the main character, if she feels a call to adventure, if her call to adventure is even so much as mentioned at all, but if she feels a call to adventure, there is an expectation that she should not answer that call. She shouldn't be the Fey woman. She shouldn't be wild. She shouldn't encounter her wild side. She should remain reserved and pure and like the princess in the tower that we see that motif over and over. She should be wise, reverent, patient, all these really good things, which I have no problem with, but we expect it of a child who has just newly come into what we conceptualize as adulthood when it comes to girls. We expect girls to completely forego their fae period and just turn into Galadriels. Whereas with boys, we have statements like boys will be boys. We have this expectation that boys will take a longer time to mature, that they're going to go through their rough and tumble phase. They're going to go through the exploration phase. But when that same exploration is for female characters, it's frowned upon. And we see some of this spill into real life in certain red pill circles. This exploration stage is completely condemned in women, but completely encouraged in boys. Yes, we have differences, but we are fundamentally human. The need to explore, the need to figure out ourselves, the need to go through that stage of that phase stage to encounter the wild side of ourselves is crucial to our growth. Do I agree with hookup culture and that side of exploration of the self? No, I don't agree with that. I have Christian values, so there are certain things I don't think are necessary to the exploration stage. But this, what we term in cinema as the manic pixie phase, or the Fey woman phase, or the Fey man phase, or the wild man phase, that needs to happen. And you can't expect a 24-year-old to be Galadriel. She's not going to be that. And I think there is an expectation that she should be. That within her 20s, she should have come into her womanhood. There is nowhere of that expectation on men. Even within the realm of stories, particularly, not necessarily within the realm of real life, even though we do see echoes of this in certain parts of society. But for the most part, nobody is really expecting a 20-something-year-old to be wise. But that is what we see in stories because the princess in the tower is always young but reverent. She's always displaying the calm collectedness of somebody who is a lot older. And I think for the most part, that is very unusual to see. And if stories are supposed to not completely mirror life, but to imitate life, I feel like there needs, as we have moved on in our storytelling and come to a point where we have the novel, which was an art form born from the desire to portray real life and to move away from the fantastical. I think we've come to a point where we want to see more of real life. We want to see the human archetypes explored in fullness in one person. Because in mythology, what would happen is that these archetypes would be explored, but they would be different characters. For example, in Dr. Faustus, the attributes were being played by a different actor. You wouldn't have like good and goodness and patience and all of that played by one person. It would be played by different actors, and that's the way myths are written. The fae part of a woman would be played by the fairy queen. The sort of docile part would be played by the innocent daughter. So all of these things, we've more and more we've put them together into one person, and we're trying as best as we can in modern stories to see what that looks like in one person and to understand how all these really different characters, which we could really only explore in their fullness if we kept them as separate characters, but bringing them together now, we're still kind of working out the balance in storytelling. And of course, there are writers who have done this. Eowyn is a brilliant example of that phase of going through that desire for adventure and wanting to achieve something and wanting to have valor and honor, because these are all things that women also desire. It's not just the boys who want to be heroic. There is a call in all human beings that we all have to answer. And I think for too long in stories, we've acted as if women didn't have that call. And which is why I think a lot of women gravitated towards Eowyn. And I've made a whole video on her and talking about why feminists like Eowyn. But there's a reason why they like her. It's not just because she fights, it's because for not for the first time, there are other characters who have been like that, but in a story that is well told to the magnitude that it's told by Tolkien, and it wasn't just like a small time fiction or something like that, but in a story of that magnitude, Tolkien really captured what women wanted to see for so long. We wanted to see a heroic myth. We wanted to see a hero that looked like us, that reflected our process, and Eowyn definitely fits the bill. So the next question that I have been asked is, what do I mean by oppression? What is my definition of oppression? And when I talk about oppressive structures, what exactly am I talking about? Okay, so first of all, I kind of just want to differentiate between oppression and rules. Rules are restrictive, but they usually work out for the improvement of a society or a person. Oppression is when those rules, those systems or dynamics put in place become tyrannical in the sense that they now oppress the human spirit, and because of that, the effects are detrimental to that person or the society that they live in. So, for example, for if you live in a society that says women cannot work at all, you're going to have an underdeveloped society, because that has just not been the way we've operated throughout history. You're going to struggle in order to get your economy to run. You're going to either be really limited to a small economy, or you are going to struggle to basically make your economy big enough to support a population that's going to boom if all the women really have to do is have kids. So I think that is what I would talk about when I'm talking about oppression. especially with systems. You can have oppressive dynamics. Like, for example, when a mother is too overbearing on her children and so they can't develop. Now, are we saying that her love for her children is negative? No, to love your children is not negative, just like rules are not negative things. However, when it becomes too much, when it has come out of the point of moderation, you're going to step into that to that realm, that boundary, or you're going to step over that boundary and become oppressive. That's my definition of oppression. It can't just be restrictive, because I think there is no evidence to suggest that if we were left to our own devices with no rules, no morals, and we would be civilized, we would be humane. I don't think there is no evidence of that to support that, and in fact, there's a lot of evidence against it. So I think when it comes to oppression, it's where those rules, those systems, those dynamics have become something that produces a negative effect for the person and the community. And that has to kind of be measured in the long run. Like, does it cause this individual to not be able to function? Um, does it cause the society to break down? Are family bonds being broken? Are things that are fundamental to cultivating and ensuring that a society flourishes, are those things being broken down as a result of this system, these rules, these dynamics, or this, or things like that? So that's kind of how I define oppression. I wonder if you could talk some more about how women of faith can balance exercising the long repressed freedoms they deserve with religious guidance such as Proverbs 31. Okay, so I think Proverbs 31 is already really kind of specific in what it recommends for women to be, because it is proposing the ideal woman, and it goes against a lot of the things that society, especially what we have left over from the 1950s, it goes against that a lot, because it shows the picture of an assertive woman. It shows the picture of a woman who has foresight, who is wise, who is not waiting around for things to be done. She's not making herself smaller in order for her husband to look bigger. In fact, the bigger she is, the more people are impressed with her husband. So the dynamic that is in faith communities, what is prescribed to faith communities, is different to the secularist society. So I think when it comes to exercising freedoms, you have to be careful about the freedoms that you choose to exercise if you adhere to this faith. Because if you don't, then you can choose whatever you want to do based on your own ethos. But if you adhere to the Christian ethos, then you have to bear in mind what freedoms you're choosing to exercise. Are they going to be detrimental? Are they even necessary to be exercised? What is the benefit? Why are you doing this? Those are kind of questions that you need to ask yourself, and follow the logic to the end. Does this make sense? Like, if, say for example, you want to live if you have felt as if you have been repressed sexually and now you have been given the freedom to basically sleep with whoever you want to sleep with, is it wise for you to just go and sleep with anyone? Of course it isn't, because first of all, stranger danger. Not everyone in the world is a great person. So there are diseases out there. Are you clued up on that? Are you comfortable just sharing your body with the world like that? If you are, well, good for you. But if your ethos is a Christian ethos, what does that say about the strength of your ethos? What does that say about your integrity if you would go against such a fundamental part of it? So I think if you are a woman of faith, It's about evaluating the freedoms that you have and owning that you have those freedoms, but also being able to say, I I am an individual and I am making choices based on my individual values and my individual way of living, how I want my life to go, not based on society. Because if you are a person of faith, you're not even supposed to be basing your life on society. You are supposed to be basing it on strictly your kind of your ethos. Of course, not living apart from the world, you're not floating in the ether, but with changes that happen, you're supposed to view them through a particular lens. And I think the Proverbs 31 woman is a great model for everyone. However, it only really makes sense if you adhere to certain principles. So I'm by no means trying to make anybody adhere to those principles. I'm by no means trying to convert people, because that's just not my place. So this is kind of a question that was targeted at people who do believe in the Christian religion. Just think about the consequences. Think about your choices. At the end of the day, what God desires, I'm gonna quote a movie, but what God desires is a kingdom of conscience. Can your conscience rest easy with some of the decisions that you make? This is not to say you restrict yourself, but it's also giving you the power to choose, which is not something that people, not just women, but people in general, have not always had that. The ability to choose how they want to live their life. So that's the ultimate freedom that we have. You have been given the choice in a society where choosing to live a different way is not necessarily going to get you killed. So I think, and I generalize there because some people's way of life does get them killed, but for the most part, if you're just living like a normal kind of life, you can choose to do a lot of things, and that doesn't really have an effect on whether you'll die tomorrow or not. So I think understanding that you have that fundamental right to choose, and that's great and it's lovely, and you can do a lot more, and you can go for things now, you can attend university and you can go to a lot of events. You don't have to like walk around with a chaperone and all that kind of stuff, because we have the police now, and men don't have to like die in the streets. You don't have to send your son off to war. So many privileges and freedoms that we have now, but you also have to choose wisely, because it's not just a candy store where you're just running wild like a child who has no restraint. You need to be self-controlled and to understand what's best for you, and to make that decision best based on what is going to be good for your life, sit what will rest easy on your conscience. So that's kind of the answer that I have, because I can only sort of give advice. I don't even like giving advice, but I can only sort of give that suggestion based on how I view the world, based on how I kind of try to live my life. And I think being conscious of the freedoms, but also being aware that not all of the things you have been given the freedom to do are necessarily beneficial for your life. So that's the advice I would sort of give to women of faith. And I hope that you have found this video to be informative, that you've liked it, you've actually enjoyed listening to my take on things, and that my explanations or expansions on certain things have been beneficial. So thank you so much for watching the video. This has been the Malika Writes channel. I hope you have a lovely day.